Hello, this is Chapter 2 of K. Smith, Theories and Practice Models for OT with Children. So you have a whole other class that you're taking right now called Theory that you will be diving much deeper into all of these topics in this PowerPoint. However, in this chapter, I want to give you a quick overview so that you can have a working place to start from to at least have an idea of some of these frames of reference and theories. So I know that sometimes there's confusion between theories, models of practice, and frames of reference. Hopefully we can clear that up a little bit. So theory is kind of that explanation of observed behaviors. It kind of gives a general ideas to explain why something's happening. Some of the theories that we use some developmental theories. We already went through some of those in class. Remember Vygotsky, Bronfenbrenner, Maslow, and learning and systems theories. So we have specific OT theories, but we also use these development and learning and systems theories. So Piaget, we know, talked about adaptation, schemas, assimilation, and accommodation. Vygotsky, I drew the picture on the board of the zone of proximal development, and scaffolding, otherwise known as like grading the activity and support. Maslow's hierarchy of need. These are all developmental theories. There's also the learning and systems theories. Behavioral, one of them is a behavioral theory, expecting that you can change people's behavior by changing the responses, whether that's reinforcement or punishment, and applying those behavioral interventions. There's social cognitive theories, where we expect that people learn by observing others and through social experiences. Self-efficacy is also systems theory that believes that if a child experiences success, if they feel like they're effective, they will have more success and more expending energy towards that thing. Learning theories, dynamic systems theory. So this talks about the fact that a child's performance will depend on an interaction of multiple things. So it's dynamic. That's normally has to do with, it's that kind of three circle Venn diagram where there's the task in one circle, the child in another, and then the environment in another circle. And all three of those are influence the actual performance of the child. Maybe it's not the child that's the problem. Maybe it's the environment, or maybe it's the task. And that those three things, the goal is self-organization. So now we're moving on to models or models of practice. There's normally a picture to show how this goes down, and or to describe the models of practice, and they help to test out theories. So some of the models of practice, or one model of practice here, is the PEO, person, environment, occupation, and this model is the picture, the Venn diagram, talking about how those three things should work together to maximize optimal performance, occupational performance. So these models of practice help to provide structure and to the process of clinical reasoning. So theories are kind of the big umbrella, and then models of practice are giving you more specific structure and methods and guidelines for actually planning out what you're going to do. Some of those occupation-based larger models of practice about human occupation include things that, if you haven't heard yet, in theory you will: MOHO, PEOP, the Canadian Model of Occupational Performance, occupational adaptation. These are big occupation-based models of practice. And you should always be looking at a person or working with a person through an occupational lens. So one of these, you have to choose looking at the person through an occupational lens of human occupation. So I don't know if you've heard of NOBA yet. NOBA, NOBA, which means not only, but also. I bet Dr. Alterios talked about it, but we need to not only use a specific frame of reference, we also need to be always looking at the person through a human occupation model of practice. So using a systems approach as a model of practice helps us to look at context and things around the child to be able to plan for their evaluation, intervention, decide how we're going to modify a task. So now down to more small details that would be frames of reference. So these are concepts and definitions that say this frame of reference believes that if this is true, that's what postulates means. If this is true, then this will happen. So frames of reference gives you, the therapist, some specific strategies and techniques based on the theories and based on the models of practice. So I like to call it the lens, your frame of reference lens, like your glasses. You're viewing them through a specific lens. So these are 8 very commonly used frames of reference that you definitely will learn in theory class, and I will be going over significantly this semester and next semester in pediatric class. So you can read through the next several slides, but look, so there's 8 frames of reference that you need to, at the bare minimum right now, know what's on the slides here. Like developmental frame of reference is focused on typical progression of development. It's would let you believe that skills get progressively more complex over time. Newer thinking on that gives a little more flexibility to believe that it's not just typical or atypical. There can be just slowed, nonlinear development. Biomechanical, you know what that is, just like lifting weights and using the TheraBand and using kind of the kinesiology, physiology, range of motion, those kind of things. Motor control is helping to direct and regulate movement, whereas motor learning is learning ways of movement. We will talk about this in, like, we have a whole day just for motor learning. And motor learning, the frame of reference says that if you provide enough feedback, it will improve the movement. If you provide enough opportunities for practice, it will improve the movement and promote independence and generalization. There's the rehabilitative approach, which allows compensations and adaptations to let them be able to participate in the activities that they want. So you're not necessarily in a rehabilitative frame of reference. You're not really fixing the child. You're modifying, adapting, giving assistive technology. NDT is neurodevelopmental frame of reference, and this is used it's kind of an older frame of reference that really the only reason you would use it with children effectively would be for a child with CP or some kind of neurological deficit. But that the key words here are therapeutic handling to facilitate postural control. So you're actually helping the child to move through specific movement patterns. Sensory integration. There's a lot of controversy on this, but Dr. Jean Ayers is the person who created it. And in order for sensory integration to actually be sensory integration frame of reference, it has to be active, child-directed, and that the sensory input should be there to elicit an adaptive response. And again, we have another whole day just on sensory integration. Behavioral frame of reference would lead you to believe that you can reinforce behavior to modify it or change it, but you have to use careful analysis There's the ABCs of behavior, antecedent, behavior, and consequence. And again, we have a whole nother day on behavioral frame of reference and behavioral modifications. A cognitive frame of reference would tell us to believe that we can use a problem-solving approach to work towards helping the child to figure out how to do things themselves. So guided questioning, instead of saying, you need to do this and it would work, we can analyze the task, anticipate what might go wrong, and then specifically ask them questions and guide them through it instead of just telling them what to do. Co-op, cognitive orientation to daily occupational performance, is a cognitive approach, a cognitive frame of reference that you should remember. And that's only used for older, higher functioning children because they have to be an active part of the process. Cognitive behavioral frame of reference melds both the cognitive and behavioral frames of references and focuses on trying to change the person's thoughts in order to change their behavior. And here's your summary. Make sure you read your chapter and pay attention to what you hear in theory, because that will be applied in my class and lots of other classes throughout this semester and next. Have a wonderful day.